How do I factor out a trinomial?
Okay.
That's hard to pronounce.
Trinomial. Yes, you got it. Good job. Well, first I will let you know what a trinomial is, because if you are not involved in math classes currently, that is not a common everyday word. Trinomial is basically, it's a polynomial. And if you go to my screen, I'll show you this, and maybe that'll make a little bit more sense. So a polynomial is something that has multiple terms. Each one of these that I'm pointing to with this arrow, each one of those is a term. And poly, meaning multiple or many, is kind of a general term for any math expression that has one or more terms. And then if you want to get specific, we have binomials, which are 2 terms. And this is going a lot with language arts and thinking about prefixes and what those prefixes mean. So bicycle has 2 wheels, a binomial has 2 terms. Trinomial, tri meaning 3, like triangle, has 3 terms. And so the question is, how do I factor this? Now, that's another kind of term that should be looked into, factor. And this is a middle school term, even though we may not use the same factoring techniques in middle school as we do in high school. Sometimes we might have more trickier things to factor. Here's an example. Let's say I had the number 24. I could factor it by rewriting it as 8 times 3. That's factoring something. And 8 and 3, those are factors of 24. They're numbers that multiply to equal 24. And so what we're trying to find with this polynomial, or this trinomial, are 2 things that are going to multiply together to give you this trinomial. And it's not as easy as just knowing your multiplication tables. Oops, sorry, that was from the last question. When you're factoring a trinomial, sometimes I always learned how to do it in my head. But since I've been teaching, I learned about this area model that is a really nice tool to help out in learning how to factor a trinomial. And I'm going to draw an area model right here. A very simple version of this area model would be, and I'll use it with the 8 and the 3 that I just showed you. A simple version would be like this. Let's say I had a length of 8 and a width of 3, then I multiply them together to get 24. So you can see that the factors, and I'm going to highlight them, the factors are on the outside here. They're basically, those are the things that multiply together to give us what's on the inside. And so if I'm trying to find factors of this trinomial, I need the things on the outside that are going to multiply together to give me that on the inside. So what you can do with this area model is set up the pieces. You'll put the first term in the top left box. You'll put the last term in the bottom left box, and then from here it's kind of like a puzzle. If you've ever played Sudoku, it's a puzzle where you're trying to fit in numbers based on what's going on around it, and it's almost a trial and error kind of thing. And so this is the same idea. We know, though, that to get x squared, we'd have to do x times x, so that piece is not all that hard. Now, when you look at the piece to get negative 12, we've got a lot of possibilities. We could put 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or even 3 times 4. And the way that I decide is I'll list them on the side, and then I know that my middle term is going to have to be 4x. So that means whatever I make these terms, 1 and 12, or 2 and 6, or 3 and 4, they're going to have to add up to give me a positive 4. And so looking at my options, I can see actually pretty easily 2 and 6, that gives me a possibility of getting 4. I'll have to adjust my signs, but that's the only way I can get 4. So 2 and 6 would give me 12, and I know one of them has to be negative. And so what I do is I will go ahead and I'll multiply these together. So I do 6 times x, I get 6x, 2 times x, and I get 2x. And then from there, I'll decide which one needs to be negative to give me this middle term. And I'm going to highlight the middle term that I keep talking about. What these two basically, they need to add up to equal this, because what's inside my area model needs to equal that original trinomial. And so in order for them to add up to give me positive 4, that means that it needs to be a negative 2x, and I just crossed it out somehow. And so then that means that my 2 is going to be negative. And so then when you rewrite this into factored form, what it'll look like is x plus 6 times x minus 2. All I'm doing, and I'm going to highlight my factors in yellow, these are my factors on the outside, just like they were for 8 and 3 with that very simple example. So an area model, long story short, is just, it's a tool to help find the things that multiply together to give you that original, whatever it is. And you don't need to use it, but I really like it. It kind of makes it a little bit easier and even a little bit more fun, just because it kind of makes it more like a puzzle rather than a math problem, and puzzles are fun. So there you go. Long story short, there's how you factor a trinomial.
Remember, fun is relative.